Okay, good morning everyone. My name is Alice Kelly. I am Head of Content here at CEFPRO. I'm here to introduce Adrian Korczyński, who is Director of Cybersecurity Business Unit at Comarch. We'll be discussing the cyber threat landscape and protection methods to combat security and fraud. Adrian, if you could provide a short introduction.
As a Comarch, we are a global company, a global leader of IT solutions and services. And my department is my cybersecurity business unit, deals with the strictly cybersecurity business with cybersecurity commercial offers. So we offer cybersecurity products in many markets like finance, healthcare, telecommunication services. We do it for over 20 years. We are all over the world, and we are trying to help our clients to be the best of the best in terms of what can you do today with cybersecurity and with protecting your environment, your corporate environment, and with protecting your customers.
Okay, perfect. So moving into the first question then, can you provide some background around the cybersecurity landscape and fraudulent activities institutions should be looking to protect against?
Yeah, so actually we have a lot of experience regarding, as I said, the cybersecurity, and the latest experience we have is obviously regarding the coronavirus situation we have and the extended surface of attacks that are related today. So for instance, Berkeley's reports that 66% of more scams in the first half of this year compared to the previous year. And this is obviously something that is driven with the coronavirus situation, with the public social distancing and isolation and working from home. And this is obviously something that is up to date. And this is something that every company should be aware of and probably is aware of. So this extended surface of attacks brings more opportunities for the hackers and for the fraudsters all over the world. And as Comarch, we have a lot of experience we can share, a lot of products that could be applied, and a lot of services that we can offer to help securing the corporate and securing the clients. And we often say that trust and privacy is the bedrock of consumer trust, and trust drives business growth, which is very important, not only for the risk circumstances, not only for the risk part of your day-to-day business, but also for growing your business.
Great. So with that in mind, and some of the things that you've seen in your experience, what are some of the common security weaknesses that you see across the industry that should be looked into in the first instance?
So definitely something that is cross-industry today, no matter if you are dealing with the banking industry, with the services, with the online services. The most common threat today probably is the threat of stolen credentials databases. And actually, this is something that you can just easily buy on the internet and then try to use it with the stuffing credentials attack, try to use it for both the corporate client, the corporate user, and the end users of the client of your, for instance, services. And this is actually a very easy to buy today because there are a lot of leaked credentials in the dark web available for just an easy purchase, and it's like an online shopping. And this is something that actually is connected to all the services, all the online services today, and all the company, because still simple password verification is something very common across the systems. And I think in terms of today, in terms of securing your business, this is very important because, as I said, most of the system based on the password. So a way to do it efficiently. So for instance, introduce two-factor authentication. For instance, introduce some tokens. This is a very important to do it in a way not to compromise the user experience. And this is something that Comarch is actually very interested in. This is something that's the field we are working on for the last years in terms of the research and development. And we are concentrating on providing ways to enable very high security for the end user, but not compromise the user experience, which is crucial today. And actually, as we say, we are seeking for a perfect balance between the security and the usability of the IT system.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So moving on then, how can institutions review their corporate user environment to identify areas requiring increased security and better protect the enterprise?
So in our opinion, in Comarch, we figured out few important aspects just to make sure that your environment is safe and sound. So first and probably most important is the device reputation. So device reputation tends to inspect your workstation, inspect your device, look for instance, for malware detection, look for some specific things that simply don't match. So I would use an example. You can see today that the work from home it's a very high trend. So probably most of the world today works from home. So the question is how your home office is secured compared to your traditional office. Now, in security, there's a paradigm called zero trust. And I think today this paradigm is of paramount importance because you probably work while you are working from home. You don't have such a good security that you had in the office in terms of the network security, the network layers, and the perimeters you had in the office. So probably while working from home, you have a regular internet router that is on some default settings. So your network security is probably much lower than traditional. So for companies that introduced the zero trust paradigm, if you have it on board, you're probably more prepared for this happening today, for the massive remote work. If you don't have that, you have to inspect, which is very important, inspect the workstation, inspect all the aspects that are available. So in our opinion, it's like device reputation, very important, and malware detection. So for instance, detecting is the device exactly the same, or how much the same is the device that the user is currently using compared to previous week or yesterday, right? So this is the first aspect. The second one is so-called behavioral biometrics. So behavioral biometrics is the way you handle the devices, the way you use it. How do you use your mouse? How do you use your keyboard? And this is also very important just to figure out is actually the user the same user? Does he handles the device the same way, or is it something new? Like he uses his mouse with his left hand, or he uses his mobile device in his left hand, or at some different angle than previously. Now this is the second one, and the third one, very important, is user profiling. So how did the user tend to use the system? At which hour of the day? What was the access? So from what network? From what geolocation? This is very popular today, inspecting the user location in terms of the geographic. And this is something that can be introduced no matter if you have the zero trust on board or not. This is something that is important to make sure that your assets are secure.
Great. So what are some of the key protection methods institutions should be aware of to combat cybersecurity and fraud?
So obviously the most important and fundamental is two-factor authentication, and I think today it's a very important to think about that as an actually mandatory solution you have to have on board, not only for mobile banking, not only for internet banking, but probably for most of your systems, also for your internal corporate systems. So the two-factor authentication can be introduced in numbers of ways, from a simple SMS code that you have to retype, through the mobile token, and through the very sophisticated mobile token, which is related to your specific transaction, to your specific action that you are making, and a very interactive one. So one that is aware of, for instance, biometry, is one who is aware of your device reputation, like is your device rooted, is your device in a debug mode, is your device compromised or unsecure on any level. So and this is obviously something that is the most important today in probably all the aspects, all the services. But as you can see, as you can probably experience in your life, this is something that compromises the user experience. So the way to make it the most profitable for you is to enable the two-factor authentication only on some specific circumstances, only if something is suspicious, only if you expect that something is wrong. And for this to happen is a so-called adaptive authentication. And adaptive authentication is something that if the user is looking the same, if the user is acting the same, if everything is perfectly the same as it should be. So for instance, the geolocation matches, for instance, his workstation, his internet browser, his Windows or Linux or Mac OS version is pretty much the same, you can stick with a simple password. However, if everything is suspicious, you can enable a two-factor authentication. And there are many ways to enable the two-factor authentication. And as I already said, there are many ways to detect if something is suspicious on the workstation or on the user's device.
Okay, and can you provide any use cases for any companies that you've worked with? Of course, excluding any company names or proprietary information, but any experiences that you've had with cybersecurity breaches and steps to identify and mitigate them?
So I think a very interesting example of how we helped and how we discovered that new ways of attack is a example with our smart cards. So actually, Comarch is we delivered smart cards like that all over the world, and this is a very traditional way to handle the two-factor authentication. And at the same time, this is a very high security solution, and we tend to use it still. However, at some point, we figured that we experience attacks that people just tend to leave those smart cards inserted in their workstations all the time. So when they go to lunch, when they go to a coffee, this smart card is still inserted in the smart card reader. And actually, another breach can happen. So for instance, an attacker can access your workstation remotely, saying that he had already a so-called persistent threat, and he's already on your workstation. And as you leave, he will be able to use this smart card because it's still inserted and can be accessed from the workstation. And actually, the attackers are so, let's say, extraordinary in their actions. They can even show you a screen saying your Windows is being updated. You can go grab a coffee because it will take like 15 minutes. And then some users, and obviously this is a fake screen, so some users can just walk out and grab a coffee, and at the same time the attacker can use your two-factor authentication from your smart card. So as I said, this is a very high security solution in terms of the technicalities, but in terms of user experience, we had some flaws over there. And this is and that was the time, it was like, I think 7 years ago, and it was the time when we said, hey, high security from the technical standpoint doesn't mean the high security from the end user standpoint. Now, the solution to that was a token like this, and we developed it in Comarch. So a special functionality that it has a so-called human detection button, and this is right over here. it was a very simple solution because it requires a user to interact and to prove that he's actually near the workstation and that he didn't leave for a coffee. So this is something to make sure that the end user is actually performing the action he tends to. And after that experience, we moved to another level and we concentrated on how to put this into not only with the devices like this, but also into mobile world, but also into desktop world, into the use cases where people don't have the USB devices like that. And this is something that was very successful. I mean, the devices we introduced are successful, up to date, and they work perfectly. And the experience we have from that, we just built our new products, new solutions based on that. And for instance, what we say is that when you have a mobile token, you can have flows like that. So you have to think about it. You have to look into the user flow. You have to figure out how the attacker will work. So actually, we in Comarch have a very talented team, and we tend to think, hey, what will be the next surface of attack? What will be the next type of attack? And we try to put it into our solutions, into our services.
Okay, perfect. Well, that was all of the questions for today. Any closing comments or thoughts, Adrian?
Yeah, it was a huge pleasure to speak with you today. So thank you very much for that. Now, in terms of the cybersecurity, I really hope that our industry and our world will stay safe, because this is something that matters for all of us, and we all have to really feel safe in our new world, in a world where most of the services, most of the shopping, and most of the meetings is being online. So I really hope that after this webinar, after this hard time that we have today, we will still feel very safe in terms of the cyber threats.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time and sharing your insight today.
Thank you very much. It was a huge pleasure, and hope to speak with you again soon.